when a band walks down the street, they've got to look like they're in a gang. I can't remember where I read that from somewhere, and they were mentioning a certain band. I can't remember which band it was that didn't look like a gang, and they suffered for it.
Yeah.
The Rolling Stones, even though they've hated each other at some points, they do look like a gang. And a band for me has to, or for all of us, has to look like that gang, has to feel like that gang for us. In a way, I think subconsciously we wanted this album to be a little bit of, I guess, a showcase of what we've previously done in our 3 previous albums. And I do say subconsciously because somebody pointed out to me this recently. They said, "Oh, this album, it's pretty much got kind of all the genres you guys have ever done." And I hadn't thought of that, but it really does. It's got the, hard and fast, aggressive stuff. It's also got the melodic pop stuff, and then some of the sort of slower paced, drony, stoner rock sort of stuff, which are all sort of covered in the first 3 albums. And I guess that came about a little bit accidentally as a result of wanting something that was quite disparate and in genre, but also in lyrical theme. So once we kind of established that we wanted something that was a little bit challenging in terms of cohesion, then we just set about kind of just playing, writing songs and playing them. And I guess in the end, we just ended up playing what we know how to play. And those 3 sort of genres that I mentioned before are the ones that do tend to come out more than anything else. Pretty much they're the things we've covered in our album, so that's what ended up coming out.
And I guess maybe even to take the discussion further back, obviously this record we've been talking about has definitely provoked some interesting responses, but I suppose the band project Peabody overall has a really interesting history, and I'm curious maybe for people coming to your music more recently, is it possible to maybe go through a little bit about the history of the band, how you guys came together and your shared ideas about music?
Yeah, sure. The band was started by Ben, Shammy and I when we left high school. I guess you could say that there was a version of the band when we were in high school. And just for a bit of context, I finished high school in 1993. So, we've been around the block. So, and Ben and I started the band, again, I guess a version of the band. The first time we played as Peabody live would have been maybe 1995, but we played under a couple of other names before that. We were playing originals by then and stuff as well. I know a lot of bands these days are still in high school where they're playing gigs and writing originals and things like that, but I guess maybe we were just a little slower out of the blocks. And then from then on, we had revolving drummer syndrome. We've had about 5 or 6 drummers, but really 3 that kind of have been permanent, and we recorded with, I guess, our first drummer, Gary Butler, we recorded an EP with, and he was with us for a couple of years, and he was actually a much older than us. Well, not much older, but a good 6 to 7 years older than us, and an incredible drummer, and he really taught us a lot about being tight and really got us up to speed in terms of our own musicianship. We were pretty crap on guitar and bass, but because we had such a good drummer, and a rock band is really only as good as its drummer, we automatically were kind of, at least played well. I don't know about the songwriting, but we played really well straight away because this drummer was so good, and he made us be really good. He had enough and left, and then we had a couple of others that kind of didn't work out. And then Graham Truan, our old pal Graham Truan, joined, and we recorded with him an EP and 2 albums. And he was with us for 8 years, and we did the bulk of our touring, and the salad days, I guess you could say, were when Graham was in the band, in terms of us getting airplay and playing things like the Big Day Out and all the festivals and things like that. And then for the last two albums, we became a 4-piece, so we were a 3-piece up until then. I should also say that throughout that period, I was writing most of the songs, and then started writing songs, and now Ben writes all the songs.
Yeah.
So that's probably the most interesting transition, is that songwriting change of the baton.
If you were to outline for future generations what the Loose Manifesto of Peabody is, how would you summarise it?
Wow, for future generations, like a time capsule.
Yeah.
the Loose Manifesto of Peabody. The irony is that I don't think Peabody's manifesto is that in itself as a band is that loose. I think it is quite a tightly knit declaration. Maybe I'm just deluded, and once I start on it, it will prove to be, it will unravel like an old jumper, and will actually prove to be quite loose. But it's one of constantly being busy and creating something. It's one of, as I said before, being in a collective of people that are pulling in the same direction and have the same ideas about what it is to interact with each other in a way of creating something. I mean, being in a band is, I guess theatre touches on it a little bit, but imagine if an artist paints something, and a visual artist paints something and then says to someone else, well, why don't you paint something over the top and hope that I'll like it? I mean, what are the chances of that, you know? And that's effectively what we're doing. Someone writes a song and everyone adds their bit to the canvas.